Egwen, stop smiling like that, you'll jinx yourself. Nymera's voice cut through the crisp morning air. Egwen paused, her hands frozen over the freshly gathered petals she was grinding into perfume oil. Her cheeks were still warm from excitement, but Nymera's tone carried that familiar edge, the kind that made Egwen's stomach twist. I can't help it, Egwen replied softly, her lips curving despite herself. It's my claiming day, Nymera. After tonight, I'll stand beside Alpha Marcus, not as his servant, but as his Luna. Nymera's fingers tightened around the silver comb in her hand. So sure of yourself, she muttered under her breath, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Let's hope the moon goddess feels the same. The pack's den buzzed with life that morning. Wolves hurried back and forth, preparing for the great ceremony that would bind their alpha to his chosen Luna. Garlands of white blooms hung across the clearing. Drums rested by the fire pit and the air smelled of wild honey and pine. Everyone spoke Egwen's name, the quiet girl who had served faithfully since childhood, finally chosen by the Alpha himself. Every compliment made her blush harder. Every smile deepened her hope. For years she had watched Marcus lead with strength and kindness, had dreamed of the day he'd see her as more than the girl who arranged his cloak or fetched his meals. And now, that day had come. Yet across the field, Nymera stood still, her eyes fixed on Marcus as he spoke with the elders. Her nails dug into her palm. She had loved him first, silently, secretly, endlessly, and the thought of Egwen standing where she longed to be was unbearable. Egwen turned toward the woods, gathering the wild herbs she would mix into her bath later that day. She didn't see Nymera's shadow following her. She didn't feel the bitterness rising behind her. For Egwen, the morning was full of promise. For Nymera, it was the beginning of revenge. The sun dipped lazily behind the mountains, spilling golden light across the Pax Valley. Preparations for the Luna ceremony were almost complete. Warriors decorated the central ground with woven furs, maidens carried bowls of scented oils, and the scent of roasted venison drifted through the air. The pack was alive with anticipation. Everyone except one, Nymera. From her window, she watched Egwen laugh with two younger maidens as they polished the ceremonial crown of silver leaves. Her jaw tightened, and a slow, poisonous thought crawled into her heart. How does she get everything? She whispered, her reflection glaring back at her through the polished mirror. The Alpha's attention, the pack's love. Everything I ever wanted. Her wolf stirred restlessly inside her chest, whispering in her mind. You could still stop it. Nymera's eyes narrowed. Stop it? She murmured. No, I'll only show them who she truly is. She walked to her cabinet, where rows of herbs and small glass jars glittered in the dim light. Her fingers brushed past harmless ones, lavender, thyme, sage, until she stopped at a small dark vial, sealed with black wax. Inside was a powder that shimmered faintly, pulsing like a living thing. Forbidden magic. Nymera's lips curled. The elders said it should never be used, she whispered, but they never said it shouldn't exist. She poured a small portion into her palm, mixing it with sweet almond oil and crushed petals. The potion hissed as she stirred, releasing a faint purple mist that curled and twisted like smoke. Whispering ancient words under her breath, she bound her intent to the mixture, hatred, jealousy, and the desire to reveal the truth. Let the moon see her as I see her, she hissed. Let the world know her ugliness. When the spell was done, she poured the shimmering salve into a crystal jar and sealed it with a red ribbon. To any eye, it looked harmless, a beautiful gift, glowing faintly like bottled sunlight. That evening, Egwen was kneeling by the brook, washing her hands and humming softly. Her reflection shimmered on the water. Bright eyes, a gentle smile, and hope painted across her face. She didn't hear Nymera's footsteps until the woman spoke. Egwen. Egwen turned, smiling instantly. Nymera, you scared me. You should have said something. Nymera smiled, or tried to. I wanted to speak to you before the ceremony, she said, approaching slowly. I, I've not been fair to you. Egwen blinked, surprised. Oh, Nymera, you don't need to. No, let me finish. Nymera interrupted, voice trembling in perfect imitation of guilt. You've always been kind to me, even when I wasn't kind to you. I want you to look perfect tonight, you deserve that. She held out the small glass jar, the ribbon glinting in the fading light. Egwen took it carefully. What is this? A perfumed salve, Nymera said sweetly. I made it myself. Rub it on your skin before the moon rises. It'll make you glow for Marcus. You'll be the most beautiful Luna the pack has ever seen. Egwen's eyes softened. That's so thoughtful of you. Thank you, Nymera. For a brief moment, guilt flickered in Nymera's chest, a tiny spark of humanity struggling to survive under the weight of her envy, but she crushed it quickly. I should go, she said with a small smile. I'll see you at the ceremony. As she turned to leave, the breeze lifted Egwen's hair, carrying her soft thank you through the air. The sound stabbed at Nymera's heart, but she didn't stop walking. Her wolf whispered again. You could still undo it. No, she muttered under her breath. It's too late. The spell is sealed. When night finally arrived, the sky was painted silver with the promise of the full moon. Egwen stood before her mirror, her hands trembling with excitement. She carefully unwrapped the red ribbon and opened the jar. A faint, sweet fragrance filled the room, warm like honey, soft like roses. She dipped her fingers into the shimmering cream and spread it over her arms and shoulders. Instantly, her skin glowed faintly, catching the moonlight in a way she had never seen before. She gasped. Oh, Nymera, this is beautiful. She smiled to herself, turning slowly in the mirror, admiring the radiance of her skin. She looked like a goddess, pure, luminous, almost celestial. Her heart fluttered with joy. Tonight would be perfect. Far from her room, Nymera stood outside, looking up at the rising moon. She whispered under her breath, her voice cold and trembling. Moon above, bear witness to my truth. When her body touches your light, let her mask fall. Let the beast within her rise. The wind stirred, rustling the leaves like whispers in the dark. The power she had unleashed shifted through the night air, seeking its mark. Nymera's heart pounded. It's done, she whispered, though her voice trembled slightly. By the next moonrise, Marcus will see what she truly is. Back in her chamber, Egwen sat before the mirror, unaware that the glow on her skin wasn't a blessing. It was a curse waiting to bloom. She looked toward the window where the moonlight crept in and smiled softly, whispering, Thank you, moon goddess, for giving me this night. And somewhere deep within the forest, the ancient spirits stirred. The spell was alive now, bound to her breath, her blood, and the light that would soon expose her. The moon rose like a queen that night, full, radiant, and heavy with silver light. Its glow spilled over the valley, bathing the pack grounds in shimmering brilliance. Every tree, every leaf, every stone seemed to shine. The air was alive with anticipation. Drums thudded in slow rhythm, echoing through the night as the pack gathered in a wide circle around the sacred fire. Warriors stood tall, maidens whispered in excitement, and the elders sat proudly in their seats. This was no ordinary night. It was the night their alpha would take his Luna. Egwen stood behind the ceremonial tent, her heart fluttering in her chest. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her silver gown. It was simple, yet beautiful, sleeveless, flowing softly down her frame, catching every glimmer of moonlight that touched it. Her hair was woven with small white blossoms, and her skin still glowed faintly from Nymera's salve. She looked like a dream. Breathe, she whispered to herself, clutching the small charm around her neck. Just breathe, Egwen. Tonight, your life begins. Outside, a loud howl broke through the night. Marcus's wolf calling for her. The sound made her chest tighten with emotion. She smiled, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. A maid stepped into the tent, bowing her head. The alpha waits, Luna. Egwen inhaled shakily, then nodded. I'm ready. As she stepped out, the crowd turned to look at her. The whispers began instantly, soft gasps of admiration, murmurs of praise. She's beautiful. The moon goddess truly blessed her. She looks like light itself. Egwen's cheeks flushed as she walked toward the sacred circle. Marcus stood in the center, tall and regal, his dark cloak sweeping across the grass. His eyes softened when he saw her. For a moment, nothing else existed. Just the two of them beneath the moon. When she reached him, Marcus took her hand gently. You look perfect, he murmured. Her heart fluttered. I'm ready, my alpha. The elders began the ancient chant. The drums grew louder, the pack's wolves howled in harmony, and the fire roared higher. Marcus lifted his head toward the moon and spoke, his voice firm and filled with pride. Before the moon goddess and the spirits of our ancestors, I claim Egwen as my Luna, my partner, my equal, my heart. Egwen bowed her head, tears gathering in her eyes. The crowd watched, silent and reverent, as Marcus reached for her shoulder. The mark of his bite would seal their bond forever. He leaned forward, his breath brushing against her skin. Then it began. At first, it was only a twinge, a strange, burning pulse beneath her skin. Egwen blinked and tried to steady her breathing. But then the pain deepened. Her hands trembled violently, her knees weakened, and a sharp cry escaped her lips. Marcus paused. Egwen? She stumbled backward, clutching her arms as the glow on her skin flared too brightly, then darkened, twisting into shadowy veins that crawled across her body. The crowd gasped. Marcus! I don't understand, she cried, her voice breaking as her spine arched in pain, her body convulsed, her fingers stretching, nails lengthening into claws. Her breath came in ragged sobs as her reflection twisted, half human, half beast. The drums stopped. The chanting died. Silence. Egwen fell to her knees, trembling, her once golden glow now replaced by a monstrous shimmer. Her eyes glowed faintly red beneath the moonlight, and her sobs filled the air. Marcus, she screamed, reaching for him. Please, it's me. But Marcus stood frozen, his expression turning from confusion to horror. What have you done? He demanded, his voice trembling with anger. You deceived me. No, she cried, tears streaking her beastly face. I swear I didn't. Enough. His voice roared across the clearing. You dared bring a curse into my circle? Before my pack? The pack murmured, wolves growling lowly. Some stepped back, others whispered in fear. Please, Egwen begged, crawling toward him, trembling. I don't know what's happening, I didn't. Marcus raised a hand, stopping her. His eyes were cold now. Don't come closer. The words hit her harder than any blow. Her heart broke right there in front of everyone. Marcus, I love you, she whispered, voice cracking. Please believe me. But the alpha turned his face away. The moon goddess does not bind herself to lies, he said bitterly. You are not my Luna. You are a curse. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus, no. I, Alpha Marcus of the Silvercrest Pack, he said loudly, his voice echoing through the clearing. Reject you, Egwen, before this pack and before the moon itself. The rejection hit her like lightning. Her chest burned, her knees buckled, and she screamed in pain as the bond snapped apart. Her wolf howled within her, a sound of raw anguish. The crowd shifted uneasily. Elders looked away. Egwen collapsed to the ground, shaking. Please, she whispered weakly. Don't do this. But Marcus had already turned his back. From the shadows, Nymera watched everything unfold. Her lips trembled, not from guilt, but from the shock of seeing her dark wish come true. Egwen lay shattered in the dirt, her once bright spirit dimmed into silence. A small smile curved Nymera's lips. The moon sees the truth, she whispered. Yet somewhere deep inside her chest, a flicker of unease stirred. The faint echo of a voice asking if she had gone too far. But she silenced it quickly. As the guards lifted Egwen's limp form from the ground, the crowd parted. No one spoke. No one helped. Only the cold wind whispered through the trees. The moon, silent and watching, bathed her in pale light, the same light that had once blessed her. And as she was dragged away, her tears fell onto the earth, glowing faintly before fading into the soil. The morning after the disastrous ceremony dawned cold and gray, as if even the skies mourned what had happened. The pack's drums that once beat for celebration now lay silent, and the sweet garlands of the Luna's ceremony were trampled into the mud. Where there had been laughter, there was now fear. Where there had been admiration, there were only whispers. Egwen knelt in the middle of the stone hall, her wrists bound with silver cords that burned against her skin. Her once beautiful gown was torn, her hair matted with dirt. Every inch of her body still throbbed from the cursed transformation. She could still feel the phantom ache of the claws that had ripped from her fingers, the monstrous growl that had escaped her lips before she blacked out. Now she was nothing but a prisoner. The council members sat in a semicircle before her, the elders, gray-haired and solemn, cloaked in wolf hide. At the center stood Alpha Marcus. His face was hard, his eyes hollow. He hadn't spoken to her since the night before, when he had recoiled from her as if she were poison. "Bring her forward," Elder Corin commanded, his voice echoing through the hall. The guards yanked Egwen to her feet. She stumbled, her knees scraping the cold stone floor. Her heart pounded as she looked up, not at the elders, not even at Marcus, but at Nymera, standing just behind them, her face pale and eyes full of false sorrow. She wore a white shawl, her hair neatly braided, and her hands clasped as if in prayer. To anyone watching, she looked like the picture of compassion, but Egwen could see the glint in her eyes, that quiet, satisfied cruelty hidden behind the trembling lips. Elder Corin's voice broke the silence. "Egwen, daughter of no pack, servant of the Alpha's house," he began, his tone heavy with judgment. "You stand accused of deceit, of disguising your true form, of attempting to bind yourself to our Alpha under false pretenses." "I didn't..." Egwen's voice cracked, tears spilling down her face. "Please, I swear on the moon goddess I didn't deceive anyone. I don't know what happened. I used what Nymera gave me. She said it was a gift for my ceremony." Murmurs rippled through the crowd gathered at the edge of the hall. Some pitied her, but most looked away, afraid. No one wanted to be seen defending the cursed. Elder Siran, a woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "And this salve, where is it now?" Nymera stepped forward delicately, her fingers trembling as she held out a small cracked jar. "Here," she said softly. "This is what I made for her. I never meant harm. I only wanted her to look radiant before the moon." "Explain yourself," Marcus said, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. He didn't look at Egwen, not once. Nymera lowered her head as if ashamed. "I noticed strange things about Egwen before the ceremony," she began. "She'd often wander into the woods at night alone. Once I thought I saw her eyes glow. I was afraid to tell anyone, but when she said she would become Luna, I had to know the truth. So I whispered a prayer over the salve, a revealing charm, to see if she was truly blessed or tainted." Her voice broke as tears rolled down her cheeks, perfectly timed, shimmering under the torchlight. "I didn't know it would hurt her. I swear I didn't. I only wanted to protect the Alpha, to protect us all." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Egwen. "That's a lie," Egwen cried, her voice echoing off the stone walls. "I never hid anything. I never went into the woods for evil. I went to pray, to gather herbs for healing. You knew that, Nymera. You helped me before?" Nymera shook her head slowly, sorrowfully. I wanted to believe you, Egwen. But the moon revealed the truth, didn't it? You changed before us all. Egwen turned desperately toward Marcus, tears streaming down her face. Please, Marcus. You know me. You've known me since we were children. You know my heart. Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at her at last, but his eyes were cold, distant. I saw what I saw, he said quietly. You became something unnatural. You could have killed us all. His words broke something inside her. She sank to her knees, shaking. Marcus, please. Enough. Elder Corrin interrupted, raising his hand. The evidence is clear. The Alpha's mark rejected her. The moon itself rejected her. Whether she meant it or not, she carries darkness within her. The council murmured their agreement. Egwen shook her head wildly. No, please. You're all wrong. I was cursed. I didn't do this. The salve was— Silence, Corrin thundered. You will not speak against your pack sister again. Nymera lowered her gaze, hiding a small, victorious smile. The elder rose to his feet and lifted his staff. By decree of the council, Egwen is hereby banished from this pack. Her name shall be stripped from the records. Her bond to the Alpha is severed, her title revoked. She is to leave before sundown, never to return. The words fell like stones in her chest. Egwen let out a choked sob. Please, don't do this to me. I have nowhere to go. Marcus turned his back, his voice barely above a whisper. Go, Egwen, before I lose the little mercy left in me. She reached out weakly, her fingers trembling, but the guards seized her arms and dragged her toward the doors. The heavy wooden gates opened, and the cold wind rushed in. Outside, the forest loomed dark and endless, the same forest where she had once gathered herbs for healing, now her prison of exile. As the gates slammed shut behind her, her cries echoed through the valley, cries of heartbreak, confusion, and betrayal. And far behind the council's hall, hidden in the shadows, Nymera watched from the balcony. She pressed a hand to her lips to hide her smirk, whispering softly to herself. Now, let's see who will want you again, cursed Luna. The forest became her home, not by choice but by the cruel decree of those she once called family. For days, Egwen wandered aimlessly through the dense woods, her bare feet torn by stones and roots. The cold wind bit her skin, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. The sound of wolves howling in the distance no longer comforted her. It terrified her. She was no longer one of them. When she finally stumbled upon a small clearing beside a stream, she fell to her knees and wept. The water reflected her hollow eyes, swollen from tears. She hardly recognized the girl staring back at her, pale, bruised, broken. This is what I am now, she whispered to the stream. A ghost of what I used to be. She built her first shelter from fallen branches and leaves, clumsy and uneven, but it kept her dry when the rain came. She used sharp stones to cut vines, gathered berries she recognized from her pack's lessons, and trapped small hares with makeshift snares. Slowly, painfully, she began to survive. Each morning she rose before the sun, bathed in the stream, and whispered a prayer to the moon goddess, though her faith felt weaker each day. Please, she would murmur, take this curse from me, or end me. I can't live like this. But there was never an answer. Sometimes she thought she heard voices, whispers carried by the wind, the elders, the pack, or Marcus's deep tone echoing in her mind. Monster, they would hiss. Deceiver, you were never one of us. She would cover her ears and cry until the wind swallowed her sobs. As the moons passed, she learned the rhythm of the forest, when the deer came to drink, where the herbs grew thickest, how to read the sound of rustling leaves before the rain. Her hands became calloused, her body leaner, stronger. Yet inside, she remained hollow. The nights were the worst. The first time the full moon rose after her exile, she felt it. A sharp pain, deep and burning, crawling through her veins like fire. She screamed and fell to the ground, clutching her chest as her body twisted unnaturally. Her nails grew into claws, her teeth sharpened, and her eyes glowed silver. She staggered to the stream, gasping, and the reflection that met her made her choke on her breath. Her face was half beast, half human, the curse revealed in every distorted feature. She struck the water, shattering her reflection, but it always returned. Every full moon after that, the same agony followed. No matter how far she ran or how tightly she hid, the transformation came. Her cries echoed through the trees, haunting even the night creatures that lurked nearby. When morning came, she would crawl back to her shelter, trembling and exhausted, her body covered in dirt and blood, sometimes her own, sometimes from the wild animals she didn't remember attacking. It became a cruel cycle: survive by day, suffer by night. And as the weeks bled into months, her heart hardened. The girl who once smiled at sunrise, who sang softly while tending herbs in the Alpha's courtyard, was gone. What remained was a wanderer, a creature caught between worlds, too human to belong to beasts, too cursed to belong to men. The day began like every other. The forest was quiet, save for the songs of distant birds and the soft whisper of the wind moving through the trees. Egwen moved silently, her basket slung across her shoulder as she searched for herbs by the riverbank. The air smelled of rain and wildflowers, peaceful, almost comforting. But peace in her world was always fragile. She bent to pluck a cluster of moonleaf roots when a sound broke through the stillness. A low groan, human, pained. Egwen froze, her senses sharpening instantly. She turned toward the sound, her heart pounding. It came again, faint but real, somewhere beyond the thick cluster of trees near the stream. Instinct told her to run. She had spent too many months hiding from the cruelty of others to risk being seen now. For all she knew, it could be a scout from her old pack, or a rogue sent to finish what the council started. She tightened her grip on her basket and began to turn away. Then the sound came again, this time a choked gasp, raw with suffering. Something in her chest twisted. No matter how she tried to harden her heart, she couldn't ignore the voice of someone in pain. It wasn't who she was. It never had been. With a sigh, she set down her basket and crept toward the noise, her steps light and cautious. She moved between the trees, following the trail of broken twigs and blood-streaked leaves until she found him. A man. He lay half-buried beneath a fallen branch, his clothes torn, his body covered in dirt and dried blood. His chest rose shallowly, his skin pale as ash. Egwen's breath caught. He didn't look like anyone from her old pack. His features were different, regal even, with sharp cheekbones and a jaw shadowed by dark stubble. His hair, long and tangled, glistened faintly under the sunlight. Still, her fear whispered, "Don't get involved. Walk away." But the compassion in her heart refused to listen. She knelt beside him, brushing leaves from his face. His skin was burning hot. He had lost a lot of blood, and from the look of his torn tunic, he had been attacked, maybe by rogues or wild beasts. "Hold on," she murmured softly, even though he couldn't hear her. With effort, she lifted the branch off him. The weight nearly crushed her, but she refused to stop. Grunting, she dragged his limp form through the underbrush inch by inch until she reached her small hut. By the time she got him inside, her arms trembled with exhaustion. She laid him gently on her mat and ran to fetch water from the stream. She cleaned his wounds carefully, using the herbs she had gathered over the months, crushed moon leaf to stop the bleeding, silver root to soothe the fever. Her fingers worked quickly but tenderly, guided by instinct and old pack knowledge. When she finished, she sat beside him, staring at his still face. He looked peaceful in sleep, but there was something powerful beneath his calm, a presence that made her uneasy. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man didn't answer. He only breathed, slow and shallow. Egwen stayed awake most of the night, feeding the fire, watching over him. There was something strange about him, the way his scent carried authority, the faint flicker of energy she felt when she brushed against his skin. But exhaustion finally pulled her under. She drifted into sleep beside the dying fire, unaware that the man's eyes opened briefly in the night, glowing faintly gold. Morning came with soft light slipping through the cracks of her shelter. Egwen stirred, groaning softly. Then she froze. He was awake. The stranger sat propped against the wall, his gaze fixed on her. His eyes, sharp, amber, and commanding, caught the light in a way that made her heart skip. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was thick, charged. "You saved me," he said finally, his voice deep but hoarse. Egwen swallowed. "You were dying. I couldn't just leave you." A small smile touched his lips. "Most would have." She looked away. "I'm not most." He studied her quietly, the softness of her face, the faint sadness in her eyes, the strength that clung to her even in her solitude. There was something familiar about her, something his wolf responded to. "My name is Keden," he said after a pause. "I owe you my life." Egwen hesitated. "You don't owe me anything. Just rest." But Keden's gaze lingered, searching. His wolf stirred restlessly within him, growling softly, not in warning, but in recognition. He had never felt this before, not with any woman, not even with the ones his advisors pushed before him. His wolf always rejected them, cold, detached. But now, sitting before this quiet woman with dirt-stained hands and sorrow in her eyes, his wolf was calm. No, not calm, drawn. "What's your name?" he asked. "Egwen." He repeated it softly as if testing it on his tongue. "Egwen." Then, with a curious tilt of his head, "Why do you live out here alone?" Her heart skipped. The question pierced deeper than he could know. "I prefer solitude," she said quickly, turning away to tend the fire. Keden didn't push, but his eyes didn't leave her. "No one chooses solitude without reason." Egwen said nothing. Her throat tightened as memories flashed. Marcus's rejection, Nymera's lies, the council's cruel verdict. The humiliation still burned like a scar. She blinked hard and focused on the boiling pot before her. "You should eat something," she said simply. Keden accepted the bowl she handed him. Their fingers brushed. A fleeting touch, yet it sent a strange warmth through them both. His wolf stirred again, a low rumble of approval in his chest. For the first time in years, Egwen didn't feel entirely alone, and for the first time in his life, Keden's wolf didn't resist. He didn't know who she was or what darkness she carried, but as he watched her move around the hut with quiet grace, one thought settled deep within him. He had found something rare. The days that followed brought a peace Egwen hadn't known in years. Since the night she carried the stranger into her hut, her quiet world had changed. Keden was no longer the pale, wounded man she'd dragged from the forest floor. Strength had returned to his body, and with it, a commanding presence that seemed to fill her little shelter with warmth and something deeper, something she didn't dare name. At first, she thought she would send him away once he recovered. It was safer that way. But every morning she found herself fetching water for him, grinding herbs for his wounds, and watching him from the corner of her eye as he helped stack wood near the hut. He was different from any man she had known. He spoke little but noticed everything. The way she hummed softly while cooking, how she avoided the moonlight, how her smile flickered only when she thought no one was watching. And then, there were his eyes, golden, sharp, yet strangely gentle whenever they met hers. "You shouldn't be doing that," she said one morning as he tried to lift a pile of logs. His wounds weren't fully healed. "I heal faster than most," he said, smiling faintly. "I'm not as fragile as I look." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not saying much. You nearly died out there." He chuckled, the first true laugh she had heard from him. And for a moment her heart softened. She didn't know why it felt so easy to talk to him. There was something steady in his voice, something that made her feel safe, without realizing she needed to. Days turned into weeks, and their rhythm became familiar. They gathered herbs together, shared meals by the fire, and sometimes walked in silence through the woods. Keden told stories about distant lands, about the way the stars guided travelers and how wolves in other territories sang differently to the moon. Egwen listened quietly, her heart caught between fascination and fear. Each time he spoke of pacts, of loyalty and bonds, she felt a pang deep within, a reminder of what she had lost. "What about you?" he asked one night as the fire crackled between them. "What's your story, Egwen?" Her hand stilled over the pot of stew. "There's nothing to tell. There's always something." She met his gaze briefly, then looked away. "Some stories are better forgotten." Keden studied her in silence. His instincts told him there was more, a wound that ran deep beneath her calm. But he didn't push. Instead, he offered her a smile that reached his eyes. "Then I'll wait," he said softly, "until you're ready to tell me." Egwen didn't know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like that, without judgment, without demand. Her chest tightened with something that scared her more than loneliness ever had. The beginning of trust. Their bond deepened quietly. They shared laughter over burnt meals, raced each other through the trees, and sat together during long evenings when the sky turned gold and purple. Egwen found herself looking forward to his voice, his stories, the sound of his footsteps outside her hut. But no matter how close they grew, she could not let him in completely. Because every full moon, the curse came back. Cruel, merciless, unstoppable. The night before the next full moon, Egwen grew restless. She couldn't stay near him when it happened. She couldn't let him see the monster the spell turned her into. When Keden asked where she was going, she smiled faintly and said, "There's something I must do alone." He frowned but said nothing. Yet when she disappeared into the woods that night, a strange unease filled him. His wolf stirred inside him, growling softly, not from anger, from longing. "Follow her," his wolf whispered. "She hides from you, but she belongs to you." Keden pressed a hand against his chest, startled. His wolf had never spoken like that before. It had always been cold, distant, resistant to every woman that crossed his path. But now, it was restless, alive. He looked toward the trees, where Egwen's scent lingered in the night breeze. It was warm and sweet, tinged with sadness. He didn't follow her, not yet. But he sat awake until dawn, staring at the fading moon, his heart heavy with a question he couldn't shake. The next morning, Egwen returned. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair damp with dew, and her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. She tried to hide her trembling hands as she stirred the fire. "Did you go far?" Keden asked gently. "Not too far," she murmured. "I needed to clear my mind." He nodded but didn't believe her. His wolf stirred again, whispering in low growls. "She runs from the moon. She hides her pain. But she is meant for you." Keden watched her silently, his eyes soft but filled with quiet curiosity. He didn't know what secret she carried, but something told him that whatever it was breaking her. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to protect her from it, even from herself. That night, as Egwen lay on her mat pretending to sleep, she heard Keden's voice in the darkness. "Egwen." She turned slightly. "Yes? Whatever it is you're afraid of, you don't have to face it alone." Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to tell him everything, about the curse, the rejection, the lies that destroyed her life. But fear still ruled her heart. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Some shadows don't leave, no matter how much light you bring." Keden's reply was soft but certain. "Then I'll stay until they do." Egwen closed her eyes, and a tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time since her exile, she let herself dream again. Not of the past, but of a future she never thought she deserved. The forest was calm that night, wrapped in a blanket of silver moonlight. Crickets hummed in rhythm with the breeze, and the air smelled faintly of pine and wet soil. Egwen moved quietly through the trees, her heart racing as the moon rose higher. She could already feel it, that familiar, unbearable pull beneath her skin. The curse was waking again. She didn't know that behind her, Kedon followed. He moved with the grace of a trained warrior, his wolf senses sharp, his heart pounding. Something in Egwen's behavior these past weeks had stirred his curiosity. Her sudden disappearances, her trembling hands when the moon was mentioned, the sadness in her eyes each time she looked at the stars. Tonight, he needed to know why. Egwen reached a clearing surrounded by glowing mushrooms and wild roses. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest as pain tore through her body. Her nails lengthened into claws, her breath grew ragged, and her bones cracked with a sound that echoed in the quiet forest. She cried out softly, not from the pain alone, but from the shame that came with it. Her skin darkened, fur sprouting across her arms, her eyes glowing gold. From his hiding place, Kedon froze. His wolf stirred inside him, not in fear, but in awe. He watched the transformation, her pain, her trembling, the way she curled into herself as if begging the moon to stop. But to him, she wasn't monstrous. She was heartbreak and beauty woven together, a soul trapped between two worlds. When it was over, Egwen stood half human, half beast. Her breathing steadied. She looked at her reflection in a pool of moonlit water, her eyes wet. "I will never be normal again," she whispered. "No one should ever see me like this." A twig snapped. She turned sharply, panic flashing in her eyes. Kedon stepped into the clearing, his expression calm, his eyes glistening in the moonlight. "Egwen," he said softly. She stumbled backward, clutching her arms as if to hide her twisted form. "No, don't look at me. You shouldn't be here." But Kedon didn't move away. He walked closer, his steps steady, his voice low and tender. "You think this frightens me?" She shook her head, tears falling. "I'm cursed, Kedon. You don't understand. This thing, I become every full moon. It's what destroyed my life." Kedon stopped a few feet from her. "Then let it be the thing that binds us," he said, "not what breaks you." She stood trembling, her claws glinting like shards of sorrow, her eyes filled with fear and shame. "Please," she whispered hoarsely, "don't come any closer." Kedon took one slow step forward, then another. His heart thundered in his chest, but not from fear, from something deeper, something ancient stirring inside him. His wolf wasn't growling or resisting. It was calm. It was home. "Egwen," he said softly, his voice barely louder than the rustle of the leaves. "Look at me." She shook her head violently, backing away. "No, you don't know what I am. You shouldn't see me like this." "I've already seen you," Kedon said, his tone gentle but unwavering. "The woman who nursed me back to life, who smiled at the sunrise, who talks to the stars as if they listen. That's who I see, not this." Egwen's breath hitched. Her claws curled into the soil. "I'm cursed, Kedon. I destroy everything I love." Kedon moved closer, slowly, until only a breath of space separated them. His voice deepened with emotion. "Then let me be destroyed, because I'd rather be broken with you than whole without you." Her silver eyes flickered. For a heartbeat, the curse inside her faltered. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Because I love you," he said firmly. "All of you." Then he reached for her hand, the hand that wasn't fully human, the hand she'd always hidden. His fingers brushed her furred skin, warm and steady. Egwen gasped as light burst between them, a gentle, pulsing glow that spread from their joined hands through her entire body. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The wind stilled. The moon brightened. Egwen cried out, her body trembling as the curse began to unravel. The fur on her arms receded, her claws melted away, and her glowing eyes softened back to their natural hue. The pain she had endured for so long faded, replaced by warmth, by peace. Keden cupped her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked up at him in disbelief. "Keden, what did you do?" He smiled faintly. "I didn't break it. We did." Egwen collapsed into his arms, sobbing against his chest. For the first time in years, she felt the moonlight on her skin without pain. The forest around them shimmered with life. The curse that had once cursed it now lifting like fog at dawn. Far away in the heart of the pack grounds, the same moonlight struck Nymera's window. She stirred in her sleep beside Alpha Marcus, her body suddenly convulsing. Her eyes flew open, glowing an unnatural red. "Marcus!" she gasped, clutching her chest. "It burns! It burns!" Marcus leapt from bed, confused. "Nymera, what's wrong?" But her body arched violently. Her wolf howled inside her, tearing to escape. Her skin shimmered, the same cursed energy that once consumed Egwen now roaring back through her veins. She stumbled out of the hut, collapsing to the ground as the pack began to gather, drawn by her screams. "Nymera!" Marcus shouted, trying to reach her. But it was too late. The curse had come for its master. The moon glowed brighter, cruel and pure, pouring its silver fire upon her. Nymera's body twisted, her wolf's cry becoming one of agony. She clawed at her own flesh, blood staining the soil. The magic she had bound to Egwen now turned inward, devouring her. The pack watched in horror as their Luna, once proud, began to tear apart from within. Her screams echoed into the night, blending with the howls of terrified wolves. Marcus fell to his knees, helpless, watching the woman he thought he loved shredded by her own wickedness. And as the light faded, there was nothing left of Nymera but ashes carried by the wind. Back in the forest, Egwen lifted her head. She felt something, a weight, a darkness, vanish from her heart. She looked at Keden and whispered, "I love you." Keden smiled and tilted his head back, releasing a low, powerful growl, the sound of a wolf calling upon the ancient right of claim. His wolf spirit surged forward, fierce yet calm, circling Egwen's with reverence, not dominance. Egwen's eyes glowed gold as her wolf responded. Their energies intertwined, wild yet harmonious. She felt it, the deep burning pull of a true bond, not forced or tainted by deceit. Keden's voice dropped into a low whisper. "Egwen, I claim you, not as a possession, but as my equal, my mate." The mark appeared where his lips brushed her skin, a soft glow blooming over her neck, spreading warmth through her body. Egwen gasped, feeling his power merge with hers, their souls stitching together in a bond that pulsed with life. Her wolf didn't resist. His did neither. Instead, they merged, one heart, one rhythm, one howl. The forest seemed to awaken around them. Fireflies glowed brighter, the wind shifted, and even the trees whispered blessings through the leaves. For the first time in years, Egwen felt whole. When the mark faded, she looked into Keden's eyes, tears shining like stars. "I never thought I'd be loved again," she said. Keden smiled faintly, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "You weren't just loved. You were chosen." He pulled her into his arms, and under the moonlight, they shared their first kiss, slow, deep, and filled with unspoken promises. The curse that once bound her heart now became a memory, distant and powerless. That night they lay together beneath the open sky, not as wanderer and stranger, but as two souls finally at peace. The moon watched in silence, its light wrapping around them like a vow. When dawn broke, Keden stirred first. His gaze lingered on Egwen's sleeping face, serene, beautiful, free. A faint smile crossed his lips, but in his eyes, there was something else. Purpose. When she awoke, the first thing she saw was his hand reaching for hers. "We have to leave," he said quietly, Leave? She asked, sitting up. Where? Keden hesitated for a moment, the corners of his mouth curving into a mysterious smile. Somewhere you belong. Egwen's heart fluttered, unsure but trusting. And where is that? He rose to his feet, extending a hand. With me? She looked into his eyes, steady, honest, glowing faintly with power, and something deep within her told her to follow. So she did, without question, without fear. As they walked through the forest hand in hand, Egwen glanced once more at the fading moon. For years it had symbolized her pain, but now it marked the night she was loved, claimed, and reborn. The days that followed were unlike any Egwen had ever known. The forest that had once been her prison now became the road to freedom. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, and every sunrise found her waking beside Kedon, the man who had broken her curse and rebuilt her heart. They walked side by side, sharing silence more intimate than words. Sometimes he would glance at her with that quiet smile that made her chest flutter. Other times she caught him watching her as though memorizing her, every laugh, every sigh, every heartbeat. When she tripped on a root, he would steady her with an arm around her waist, teasing softly, "My mate shouldn't fall for anything but me." She would laugh, blushing, brushing him off, but inside, she glowed. The path twisted through valleys and streams. They camped under stars, bathed in rivers, and shared roasted berries and venison by the fire. Yet with each passing mile, a small question lingered on Egwen's lips. Who was Kedon, really? One evening, as the wind carried the scent of civilization, smoke, bread, iron, she finally asked, "Kedon, you said we were going home, but where is home? Who are you?" Kedon was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. The flames painted gold across his sharp jaw and distant eyes. Finally he smiled, faint and mysterious. "You'll know soon, Egwen." "That's not an answer," she said softly, leaning forward. "You're not an ordinary wolf, are you?" He chuckled lightly. "Would you still love me if I wasn't?" Egwen's expression softened. "I already do." He reached out, brushing her cheek gently. "Then trust me a little longer." The next morning they continued their journey. The forest thinned, replaced by cobblestone paths and open plains. Egwen's chest tightened as they drew closer to the scent of wolves. Many wolves. Her heart raced with fear. "Are we near a pack?" she asked anxiously. Keden nodded. "Yes." She stopped walking, panic flashing in her eyes. "No, Keden, please, if they find out who I am, if they recognize me, they'll send me back, or worse." Keden turned to her, his voice calm and low. "No one will harm you, Egwen. Not while I'm here. But, trust me," he said again, his tone soft but commanding, the kind that made her wolf bow in obedience without fear. They crossed the final hill as the sun dipped below the horizon, and then Egwen saw it. A city. A world she never imagined still existed beyond her exile. And in the distance, rising like a dream carved from stone and moonlight, stood a grand castle with high towers that caught the last rays of the sun. Its banners fluttered proudly, the sigil of the Alpha King. Egwen froze. Her lips parted in disbelief. "Keden," she whispered, clutching his arm. That's the Alpha King's court." Keden's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Yes, it is." Her heart thudded in her chest. "Why are we here?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. He only reached for her hand, his thumb brushing against her palm in a quiet reassurance. "Because this," he said softly, "is home." The palace doors opened with a thunderous echo that carried through the marble halls, the sound so grand that Egwen flinched. Gold light poured through stained glass windows, scattering colors across the floor as if the heavens themselves were bowing. She had never seen anything like it. The polished walls, the scent of incense, the rustle of silk robes as courtiers paused to stare. But what froze her most wasn't the splendor. It was the way the guards, proud, disciplined wolves in silver armor, instantly went down on one knee as Keden entered. "Your Majesty," they said in unison, heads bowed low. Egwen's heart skipped a beat. Her eyes darted from one kneeling warrior to the next and then to Keden, who merely nodded, his expression calm and regal, so different from the gentle man she had known in the forest. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't hiding. He was the Alpha King. "Keden?" she whispered, her voice trembling. What are they saying?" He turned toward her, his eyes softening. "They're greeting their king." Her knees nearly gave out. "King?" But before she could gather her thoughts, a group of maids appeared, elegant, efficient, and wordless. One of them curtsied deeply. "Your Majesty?" Keden nodded once. "See that she's well cared for." Egwen wanted to protest, to ask what was happening, but she was gently led away before she could speak. The maids guided her down gilded corridors, their pace brisk yet respectful. Every few steps, they glanced at her with wide, curious eyes, the stranger who had entered beside their king. When they reached the royal chamber, Egwen stopped in awe. The room glowed with soft gold and ivory. The air smelled of jasmine and rose oil. A silver mirror towered beside a bed draped in velvet. "Please, my lady," one maid said, bowing. "Allow us to prepare you." Egwen blinked in confusion. "Prepare me? For what?" The maid only smiled. "For your presentation before the royal court." Her heart fluttered in panic. "The royal court?" "Yes, Luna," another said softly, the word slipping out instinctively, as though fate had already written it. Before Egwen could argue, they began to work, brushing her long hair, bathing her in warm water scented with petals, and draping her in a gown spun from moonlight and silk. When they adorned her neck with a delicate silver chain and placed a small crown of white stones upon her head, she almost didn't recognize the reflection staring back. The girl in the mirror was no longer the outcast who lived in the forest. She was radiant, strong, worthy, but her heart still pounded with fear. Moments later, 2 guards appeared at the door. "The king awaits," one announced. The maids curtsied and ushered her out. Egwen's hands trembled as she followed them through long corridors until the sound of voices and drums grew louder. The royal hall. When the grand doors opened, Egwen froze at the sight before her. The room was vast, filled with nobles from every pack, their faces glinting with curiosity. At the far end of the hall stood Kedon, tall, regal, and commanding. He wore his crown now, its dark metal glowing faintly under torchlight. The murmurs grew as he turned to her. "Who is she?" one noble whispered. "She came with the king," another muttered. "Could it be?" Egwen's legs trembled. She wanted to run, to hide, but Keden's eyes found hers, steady and reassuring. That was enough to make her take another step, and then another. When she finally reached him, the hall fell silent. Keden extended his hand. "Egwen," he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "You once asked who I am. I am Keden, Alpha King of the Eastern Dominion, heir to the throne of wolves." The hall was dead silent as his words resounded through the walls. Egwen felt her breath catch. Keden turned slightly, his voice carrying with quiet power. "For years I searched for one whose soul could calm my wolf, one who would see me not for the crown I wear, but for the heart beneath it. And I found her, not in a palace but in the forest where kindness still lives." He looked at Egwen then, not as a king, but as the man she knew. "Before this court and under the eyes of the moon I declare Egwen, daughter of no pack, the chosen Luna of this kingdom." The hall erupted in gasps, a storm of disbelief and awe. Egwen stood frozen, unable to speak. Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow but of wonder, of gratitude, of the impossible dream finally made real. She lowered her head, trembling as the weight of his words settled in her soul. Keden took her hand, gently lifting her chin. You once walked alone, thinking you were unworthy. But look around, Egwen. The world itself bows before your heart. Her tears spilled over. The crowd watched in silence as Keden leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, a gesture of love and claim that made the court burst into respectful howls. And for the first time, Egwen smiled through her tears. Silence fills the grand hall after Keden's revelation. Every eye is on him, the Alpha King who had ruled in mystery, now standing bare before his people. His voice is steady, but beneath it lies the weight of years untold. My father, Keden begins, his gaze distant, was a proud and powerful king, but when my mother betrayed him with another man, rage consumed his heart. On the night he discovered the truth, he called upon the moon's fury and placed a curse upon me, his only son. The room grows colder. Egwen listens, breath caught in her chest. Keden's voice deepens, carrying the sorrow of memory. He cursed my wolf, vowing that it would never accept any woman unless her heart was pure and her love true. He said, "You will know no peace, no bond, no Luna, until the moon herself approves the love you find." He pauses, emotion tightening his throat. For years I tried. Many noble women were brought to me, their beauty unmatched, their words sweet. Yet each time my wolf recoiled. He growled, he resisted, he rejected every bond. I began to believe the curse would follow me to the grave. Egwen's eyes glisten as she takes a step toward him. "And then you met me," she whispers. Keden nods, his voice softening. "Then I met you, a woman broken, cursed, and alone. Yet your heart was pure. You had every reason to hate the world, but instead you chose compassion. My wolf felt it before I did. For the first time in my life, he was calm, at peace. You were the one the moon had chosen, the one my father's curse was waiting for." The court murmurs in awe, their heads bowing as understanding dawns. Egwen's tears fall freely now, shining under the moonlight that pours through the tall palace windows. Keden turns to her fully, his expression soft, yet resolute. "You didn't just break your curse, Egwen, you broke mine too. You freed me from a fate I thought would last forever." Stepping closer, he takes her hand before the entire court. "Egwen of the woods, the one who was once cursed and cast away, today I crown you my Luna Queen." The royal attendant steps forward with a silver circlet shaped like a crescent moon. When Keden places it upon her head, the court kneels as one. Egwen stands beside him. No longer the cursed outcast, no longer the rejected mate. She is Luna Queen, chosen not by power or rank, but by the purity of her heart. The moonlight streams through the windows, wrapping around them both like a blessing. Egwen gazes up at Keden, her voice soft but certain. "The moon once cursed me. Now it blesses me." Keden pulls her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Because love was stronger than every curse," he murmurs. The grand hall fades into stillness, broken only by the distant howl of wolves. Their song rises to the heavens, not a cry of sorrow, but of joy. The tale of Egwen and Keden, the cursed maiden and the king who could not love, becomes legend. And as the night deepens, the moon glows brighter, bathing them in silver light. Egwen closes her eyes, feeling peace settle within her soul. The pain, the betrayal, the loneliness, all gone. What remains is love, true, eternal, and free. Thank you for running with me through every moonlit night, every stolen glance, every heart-stopping twist of Egwen and Keden's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment below. Tell me your favorite scene, your favorite character, and what moment made your heart race the most. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next love story we create together under the moonlight. You are the reason these stories live, breathe, and shine. Until the next one, stay wild, stay brave, and keep howling at the moon.